Hadithi. Story. Paukwa. Pwani. Yeah, I'm Chele pia. Once upon a time, I was very, very holy. As in capital HOL. And why, I don't know till today. It was standard 2. I remember the bus, we're in Aga Khan Primary in Nairobi. So the bus would get off in South Sea at the shopping center. There's a bar, Mama Mboga's over there, my sister, and then there's 2 other sisters, Tasneem and Arwa. We lived in the same neighborhood, so we had to all walk together. So we'll get off the bus. Obviously, I'll be the first one to get off the bus. And with all the conviction in my heart, I would patrol as they got off. And I was like, if anyone steps on that bottle cap that has Tusker on it written, they're going to hell. Straight. So I was like, that's your association with alcohol, and you should not get anywhere close to it. So I'd watch my sister and our friends and make sure nobody did it. That is a fundamentalist in a special way at a very early age. And there's 2 kinds of fundamentalists. There's those of us who have very strong convictions, and we keep them to ourselves. Then there's me, where my convictions applied to everyone in my circles. This went on now into high school with all my holiness. And there was a young man, actually he was old because he was much bigger than all of us. I think he repeated several times. Let's call him Slick Rick. So there I am, I'm a new girl in high school, and Bona Rick just comes after lunch and his hand just telezas, and it's on my shoulder. I have never felt so violated in my life. And that day I went home, because all he said by then was welcome to school, Umra. And it just sounded really bad the way he said it. So I went back home. Usually it's Imperial Leather. That day it was Ushindi. I showered. And after showering, I did my wudu, I rolled out my prayer mat, and I was Ya Allah, I have sinned today. Please let this not happen again. It was terrorizing. That was our phase in Nairobi, because before Nairobi, we were absolute villagers. We grew up in Chundwa. Anyone heard of Chundwa? I see half a hand, another half. So Chundwa is in Lamu Island, and I grew up with my grandmother and my granddad, raised by the village, because my parents were insane, absolutely diagnosed insane. And I'm talking about my parents, and you guys are laughing. So the man, that was my dad, one of the most eligible bachelors at that time, MP, good job, traveled and everything, had this woman, my mother, that was a young, proper, well-raised village woman who loved books and cooking. You do not find those going together very often nowadays. And they were married with a 6-month-old and a 1.5-year-old, and my father insisted that my mother goes to college, to university in America. So she was shipped off, and he was working, and you can see now why they were diagnosed as being absolutely insane, because education had taken priority. So that was our village experience. It took a whole village to look after us, coming together, while my parents were investing in what would be a better future for us. So after the village, after the bottle caps, after the smooth touch by Mr. Rick, it was time for me to pursue further educations, and off on a plane I went. My first trip out of the country, which was an experience in its own. It was now what I'll call mshtuko wa utamaduni, as in culture shock, like crazy. So this was my world was always a dichotomy. I was in the UK, then in the US. So it was always us versus them. You know, it's the big guns, Muslim versus Christian, and then you have the colonizer versus the colonized. So it was always this dual relationship going on. And it's like, you're neither here, Umra, you're nor there. And you're like, okay, these are my experiences that were happening. Until 2005, when we were backpacking with a friend in South America. Mamma mia. I will not reveal all the contents, but I will share a little bit of what happened in South America. Is we were sitting in the park, just, basking in the glory of checking out hot Latino men. And then these two giddy chicks come along and they're like, ¿podemos tomar una foto? And so le dije que sí. They're like, can we take a photo? I was like, sure, I'll take a photo. And I go to reach out for a camera, and she freaks out. And I'm like, chill, I'm not going to go away with it. But these girls, actually, what they wanted was to take a photo with us, because we were now the latest tourist attraction in that town. There was no other black people. They had never seen black people. And what usually was, black or white, good or bad and everything, now all of a sudden we were exotic. And, it was like we're just sitting in the park and like, we could get used to this life. You go somewhere, it's free lunch. You go here and it's like, oh, negrita, negrita, like little black. It makes like black sound like a dish on a menu kind of thing. So, and that's when this Tetemko, now this Mshtuko, got even stronger. And I was like, this is now a third wheel. It's like a third party where they're also colonized, but they're not like us. It's not Christianity, it's not Islam. And it shifted my whole worldview of what identity was and what truth was. And starting to embrace the idea that everyone's truth is legitimate. Like, it's not, my truth doesn't have to be at the expense of someone else's truth. And usually when we have that point of reference, it's very strong. It's not something we choose. None of us chose our names. None of us chose our race. You didn't choose your gender. There's a lot of these things that we did not sign up to by choice. And accepting that someone else's is just as legitimate. So after 14 years of running around, it seemed like New York was going to be home, because to my parents' surprise, I got married, and they had lost hope in that one. And then to their extra surprise, I got a child. I got pregnant, had a baby, and it seemed like, New York is it. Until my husband had to go on a business trip. It was September, and I looked out, and I saw winter around the corner, and I was like, you know what? I'll come to Africa also. I will come back home, wait in my mother's house until you're done with your work, then we'll go back. Within 5 days of being back home, I discovered of a project that had shut down due to the security issues in Lamu. They used to travel around bringing healthcare to remote areas. And it was a foreign-run project. And I knew the lady who used to do it, and she told me about it. I was like, you know what? If you're here for that long, before you get idle and abuse anyone, why don't you keep yourself busy? And you're in Lamu, so you might as well. And thanks to our African collective, for the first time in 10 months, I took my son and I handed him over to his grandmother. And I went to Lamu and stayed with my sister and was couch bumming for a while and snooping around on what this project was about. So 4 years later, I'm on a boat. By the way, traffic is not in our vocabulary in Lamu. So never make an excuse of traffic, because it doesn't exist. So we're on a boat going to the airport, and then there's this young man, he works in the county assembly, and he goes like, Umra, you're here. And I'm like, yeah, it's been 4 years. I'm here. And like, I don't see you. I know your sister, but I don't, what do you do? And I was like, oh, I run safari doctors. And he like stares at me blankly. Fair enough. Dawn was asking if safari doctors is a tour agent for visiting doctors that come around, which reminds me, it's like, no, actually we don't, it's not about tourism. The word safari actually means journey. But when you Google, the first definition that comes is it's an expedition to observe or hunt wild animals, especially in East Africa. And it's like, I can imagine Africans coming up with a definition of croissant. It's a rock that you see in the morning as you're walking out of the house and you fall over. It doesn't happen that way. But yet we have people defining our words and our narratives. So I explained to him very calmly that no, it's nothing to do with jungle. It's actually making the journey. We travel every month to take medical care to remote areas, and especially in Lamu, there's villages that are shut off because of the Al-Shabaab presence, because of KDF presence. So our work is to figure out every month how we can penetrate those corners of Lamu as intimately as possible. So he stares at me, he's like, "Haya, niambie sasa, ni mzungu gani?" He safari doctors. Which white man owns safari doctors? And I looked at him and I was like, "I'm the white man that owns safari doctors." And he was very confused. He's like, "But how are you guys doing it? Like, what do you mean? But who's the ultimate white person that's running the institution and supporting it?" I was like, "No, it's because there's people coming together. We have Air Kenya brings in our medicines for free. We have the hospital that gives us the vaccines that we need to go out and do. The Moon Houses is giving us free office space, so we don't have to pay any rent. There's a boat company that subsidizes our rentals so there's many pieces of the puzzle. Talk of Toweza, this is like an orgy of possibilities. This is a big one. And it makes it look like something grand on the outside, but we're actually a puzzle that's come together to make this monthly journey possible. And this boat ride seemed to be taking too long. Because the last question that I remember answering is, he goes like, but why are you doing this? I don't see the profits, why are you doing this? And one day, I had received a phone call on a Sunday. And phone calls on Sundays can be painful, especially if it's a number you don't recognize. And I'm like, okay, what's happening here? And there's this lady on the phone. She goes like, "Umra, tuko hospitali, we're at the hospital, na nimepewa namba yako, because maybe you might be able to help us." And I was like, okay, what's happening? Asema mtoto wetu, our child, 4 days old, yuko hapa. Now we need to get him out. We need to get him to the next level of care. And I've been informed that maybe you might be able to facilitate this journey out of here. And I was like, okay, so there's a young boy, 4 years old, at the hospital. We try to get gas masks to him through the county. We couldn't because they don't have infant gas masks. We try to book a ticket. He can't get on the plane because he needs a mask to be on the plane. And and then I call a friend who has a little plane. He agrees. He's like, "Umra, I'm on my way. I'll be in Manda." And so it was about bringing all these pieces together. And the father booked his ticket, Air Kenya. He was going to go ahead and wait for them in Malindi so that they can receive the child over there. So all we had to facilitate was the journey of getting him out of where he was to Malindi. When all the ducks felt like they fell into place. Fuzz is waiting at the airport. The boat is waiting at the hospital. The little boy did not make it to the stairway of the jetty. And it's like, why did he not make it? He never even had a name because they believe in naming after 7 days. And so I looked at the guy back in the boat asking me this question. And I think why we're doing it is if we can play any role to make sure a child at least lives to have a name, then we're in the right place. So from that journey of talking with him and explaining what we do is where now it kind of brings, I'm very fortunate. And I feel like from my experiences, I'm like a candle that was lit. And my job is to light the next candle and let the next candle light the next candle, especially in a society where we think our light will shine brightest by turning off another light. There's nothing to lose in that. So my saying is, we have this, I think, therefore, I am. And then I take it to the next level to try thinking, I travel, therefore, we are. And by traveling, I don't mean like, going to immigration and getting abused and getting on a plane. Travel means just walking over to Nafisa and seeing what her story is. Just getting to the next person. And if I travel, therefore I am, then definitely we can. And if we can, God damn it, we must. Taweza. Thank you.